Okay, guys. Today I've got some center bolt action for you. That mark, casting mark, kind of looks like a crown. What these are 1987 083 Corvette TPI heads. Now, this is actually the head that I've been running on the old work truck for ages. It's actually a really good high torque head. And it flows pretty decently, I'll show you. This one has been cut for 20216s, just like my old work truck. But these were really kept, ports were kept quite small on these. These were actually done a while ago for a very high performance TPI project. You can see part of the TPI there. As some projects tend to happen, you know, the customer was given a price. I started working on it. And then he decided he wanted all his stuff back after I had, 100 hours plus into it. Without paying, of course. You know how it gets. So, yeah, no. Either we finish the project or I'll just keep the parts. End of story. But, you know what's really cool about these? And I remember reading a while ago about these that, somebody said it was a modern fuelie. And I'm like, yeah, it's a nice head, but I don't see it as a modern fuelie. I mean, the chamber is nice. It's actually a crisscross between a fuelie chamber and a modern Vortec chamber. It's the same chamber that the throttle body injection motors had. Same exact chamber, which is not really bad. It's got the plugs centered. You can machine the boss down quite a bit and get some flow around it. There's plenty of meat for a 20216 without the bowls getting thin. I think I have one bowl with a little bit of core shift, and it went down to about 100 thousandths. The rest of these are quite thick, actually, and they're a heavy head. The center bolts are actually quite heavy. It's still considered a thin wall casting, though. It's not thick like the 492s are. Okay, the port actually looks really familiar, except for the hole in the roof. The hole in the roof is when they were lightening up the castings, they took that metal out, and that's where the rocker stud goes through. If I was going to save cast iron, I wouldn't save it in the port. I'm not really sure what they were thinking when they did that, but it really doesn't hurt the airflow much. This is actually the same exact port, intake port, as the 492 and the 126. It's the exact same port, except for that hole. And it flows quite similar, actually. This is a much smaller port than the other ports that I did, but it still flows quite well. Okay, you can see the short side radius, the same bolt boss issue. All right. You can see, you can kind of see that it could use a little widening on the short side radius. But like I said, these were for that TPI project, and the upper plenum. No, the upper plenum is easy to modify. The lower plenum wasn't bad, but the runners were really tough to get. I think the best I did was like 212 CFM through modified SPL runners. So it really doesn't help you to make a killer cylinder head, because the TPI intake is just going to kill you. So that's what these were originally done for. Like I said, I got a set of these on my old work truck. They probably don't flow quite as well as these, because the ones on the old work truck were done probably 20 years ago. Okay, here's an upside down view of the exhaust port. The exhaust ports on these I really like. I mean, except for the double intake manifold crossover. That kind of stinks. But the the end ports are really nice, and it doesn't take a whole lot to make them flow quite well, and it's a relatively small port. Okay, you can see it's basically the exact same port as the 492 and the 126s, except for that stupid hole in there. Let's see if we can get a zoom of that. Yeah, I've heard, you get a flow improvement if you fill that. I tried it with a piece of clay in there. Didn't really help. In any case, I wouldn't be thrilled about filling that with epoxy because I'd be afraid of that falling out. Now these, if you notice, I kept the throat radius relatively tight on these intakes because I knew it was being fed by that TPI. Same thing with the exhaust. The throat ratio is actually quite small on the exhaust. You can see they've got my radius going in. I apologize for the even dirtier than usual flow sheet. It is my last flow sheet, and wifey just let me know that the printer died. So, not sure what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the week. I guess I'll be writing them out all by hand. But if you take a look, not super great at 300. Usually we like to do around 200 CFM. It's a little bit shy in the middle, but it does come around towards the top. In fact, it comes around. I'm willing to bet these flow quite a bit better than the ones I have in my old work truck. I would think the ones on the old work truck only flow about 230, 235. But that's on a 355, and it works really well. The exhaust, it's actually fairly decent. You get 179 at 500, 191 with a small pipe, 199.5 with a big pipe, which isn't really bad. I did not CC these ports, but believe me, they are not big. They're probably about 162, 163, something like that. So, another thing I like about these, one is their center bolt, which the valve covers don't leak. The other thing about center bolts is they have the different angle bolts in the middle of the intake manifold, right? Got to pay attention to that. Hollowing out a standard intake manifold for them really doesn't work well. You really need the right intake manifold, okay? Here's the casting number 083. Right, these will probably get the studs pulled, and I'll machine them for studs and guide plates. I'll have to machine the bosses down for better seals and things like that. The other thing I like about these heads is nobody thinks of them as a performance head. Like I said, these came on the 87 Corvettes just before they went to the aluminum heads. And then they used these on 300, no. 325 horsepower crate motors. So there's actually a ton of these out in circulation. And they are definitely, they're a bridge between the old style cylinder head and the Vortec. So they do have a lot of the good burn characteristics of the Vortec, and you can pick them up for practically nothing. Cut them for decent sized valves and do a little port action on them. That'll make a nice street head. You got to remember, it's going to be tough for you to find a dual plane intake that can keep up with that. In fact, it really needs a Victor Jr. All right, guys. I know my wife said something about some sporting event today. I don't know. I'll find out what kind of engines they run and I'll get back to you. All right, guys. Have a good day. Thanks.